everybody, here we are out at Bray again on a cloudy, kind of cool day, but still pretty spring feeling. Today we're going to talk about a special wildflower that I really like that we have out here at Bray, and we're going to walk down later on to see some of them. It's called the Indian Paintbrush, and if you look at my pictures here, you can see them. There's a reason you don't see them very well right here, and we'll explain that when we get down to the field later. I'm going to read you a book about the Indian paintbrush called The Legend of the Indian Paintbrush, written by Tomie dePaola, who is one of my favorite authors. Before I start reading the book, though, I want to tell you that the story you're going to hear is not true. It's a story. It's a legend. When when Native American parents described nature to their children, they would make up some stories, some legends to help them understand why things are the way they are. So just remember that as I read the story. It's a wonderful story, but it's not true. And here we go. Many years ago, when the people traveled the plains and lived in a circle of teepees, there was a boy who was smaller than the rest of the children in the tribe. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't keep up with the other boys, who were always riding, running, shooting their bows, and wrestling to prove their strength. Sometimes his mother and father, well, they worried for him. But the boy, who was called Little Gopher, was not without a gift of his own. From an early age, he made toy warriors from scraps of leather and pieces of wood, and he loved to decorate smooth stones with the red juices from berries he found in the hills. Did you ever go out in the hills and pick berries and go home with red fingers or purple fingers? I have. The wise shaman of the tribe understood that Little Gopher had a gift that was special. Do not struggle, Little Gopher. Your path will not be the same as the others. They will grow up to be warriors. Your place among the people will be remembered for a different reason. And in a few years, when Little Gopher was older, he went out to the hills alone to think about becoming a man, for this was the custom of the tribe, and it was there that a dream vision came to him. The sky filled with clouds, and out of them came a young Indian maiden and an old grandfather. She carried a rolled-up animal skin, and he carried a brush made of fine animal hairs and pots of paints. The grandfather spoke. "My son, these are the tools by which you shall become great among your people. You will paint pictures of the deeds of the warriors and the visions of the shaman, and the people shall see them and remember them forever." The maiden unrolled a pure white buckskin and placed it on the ground. "Find a buckskin as white as this," she told him. "Keep it, and one day you will paint a picture that is as pure as the colors in the evening sky." After he finished speaking, the clouds cleared and a sunset of great beauty filled the sky. Little Gopher looked at the white buckskin, and on it he saw colors as bright and beautiful as those made by the setting sun. You ever go out in the evening and see these colors in the sky? If you look to the west, some nights they're there. Some nights they're bright, some nights they're not so bright, but they're there. Then the sun slowly sank behind the hills. The sky grew dark, and the dream vision was over. Little Gopher returned to the circle of the people. The next day he began to make soft brushes from the hairs of different animals and stiff brushes from the hair of the horses' tails. He gathered berries and flowers and rocks of different colors and crushed them to make his paints. He collected the skins of animals which the warriors brought home from their hunts. He stretched the skins on wooden frames and pulled them until they were tight. And he began to paint pictures of great hunts, of great deeds, of great dream visions, so that the people would always remember. But even as he painted, Little Gopher sometimes longed to put aside his brushes and ride out with those warriors. But always he remembered his dream vision, and he didn't go with them. Many months ago, he had found his pure white buckskin, but it remained empty because he could not find the colors of the sunset. He used the brightest flowers, he used the reddest berries, and the deepest purple from the rocks, and still his painting never satisfied him. They looked dull and dark. began to go to the top of a hill each evening and look at the colors that filled the sky to try and understand, how am I going to make them? He longed to share the beauty of his dream vision with the people. But he never gave up trying. And every morning when he awoke, he took out his brushes and his pots of paints and created the stories of the people with the tools that he had. One night, as he lay awake, he heard a voice calling to him. Because you have been faithful to the people and true to your gift, you shall find the colors you are seeking. Tomorrow, take the white buckskin and go to the place where you watch the sun in the evening. There, on the ground, you will find what you need. The next evening, as the sun began to go down, Little Gopher put aside his brushes and went to the top of the hill as the colors of the sunset spread across the sky. And there on the ground all around him were brushes filled with paint, each one a color of the sunset. Little Gopher began to paint quickly and surely, using one brush and then another. And as the colors in the sky began to fade, Little Gopher gazed at the white buckskin, and he was very happy. He had found the colors of the sunset. He carried his painting down to the circle of the people, leaving the brushes on the hillside. And see how he just tossed all the brushes to the side because he used them up. He didn't need them anymore. And the next day, when the people awoke, the hill was ablaze with color, for the brushes had taken root in the earth and multiplied into plants of brilliant reds and oranges and yellows. And every spring, from that time on, the hills and meadows burst into bloom. And every spring, the people danced and sang the praises of Little Gopher, who had painted for the people. And the people no longer called him Little Gopher, but he who brought the sunset to earth. And that's the end of our story. And now we're going to take a trip down to the field where I'm going to show you some real Indian paintbrushes. Hi, so we're down in the grass field now here at Bray. All kinds of grasses and all kinds of wildflowers too. And as you can see, if you look in front of me and beside me, and if you look kind of behind me, there are a lot of Indian paintbrush out here. So if you come out here, actually they bloom until June, but I'm not saying these will be here till June. But they're here now and they're beautiful. And after the rain we had this weekend, they're especially beautiful. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about the Indian paintbrush. If you look at these up here, you see these great big leaves growing near them. Those are not part of the Indian paintbrush. Those are prairie dock. They'll grow to be very, very tall, and they'll have big, bright flowers on them too. But the Indian paintbrush has the leaves like what I showed you on the picture I showed you how to paint. One of the interesting things about an Indian paintbrush is that we all think of the flower as having all kinds of petals on it. And while most flowers have petals, these are not petals. They are what you call bracts, and bracts are actually just very special leaves. And the leaves protect the flower, which is inside. If you come out to Bray and you look at our Indian paintbrush, you'll see that behind the bracts are actually the flowers. And they're not really pretty. They're just greenish yellow with a little bit of red, and then they stick out of the top, and we'll learn why next month. We'll talk a lot more about how the flower works. But remember, you can sound like you know lots and lots about wildflowers. You say, those aren't petals, those are bracts in there. One other thing I wanted to tell you is that you're not going to find these if you go up into the woods. Oh, there might be one or two straggling ones if there's a grassy field somewhere up there. But for the most part, you're going to find them only in this big grassy field when you come out to Bray. The reason for that is because Indian paintbrush like to grow and live where grass is. Because Indian paintbrush can't make all the nutrients it needs when it uses the sun and the warmth to make its food. And so what it does is it sends its roots down into the ground and it finds a grass. And look at all the grass around it. So that's why it's always kind of grassy when you're looking at them. It looks for all the grass, the deep, deep grass roots. And it has these little tiny tubes that it attaches to the grass root with. So the root of the Indian paintbrush attaches to the root of the grass. And in that way, the Indian paintbrush can draw out of the root of the grass the nutrients it can't make for itself. So in a lot of ways you could say it uses the grass for help, and the grass is more than willing to help because, as you can see, it's not hurting the grass at all. So come out and see our Indian paintbrush before they're all gone, because they're really, really fabulous. See you at the top again, and I'll give you some ideas for some art projects. So here we are back at the top again. Remember in the beginning of our sessions way back 2 months ago when we talked about how trees, I think even when we talked about leaves, how trees and how plants make their own food with the sun and the warmth? If a plant is green, it can photosynthesize. Photosynthesis is what helps a plant make food. So when we were out, you could see that there's all kinds of green on an Indian paintbrush. But just by itself, it can't get all the nutrients it needs. And so I told you that down there and explained to you what it does. And I kind of drew a diagram here of an Indian paintbrush and the grass. Remember we said that they grow near grasses so that they can get nutrients through their roots. Well, I'm going to show you this so that you really understand what we're talking about. If you see this Indian paintbrush, you see that the roots go down into the ground, and the grass, and the prairie grasses, native grasses in Missouri go really, really deep in the ground. So the roots go really, really deep, and the Indian paintbrush sends its roots down also. And like I said out there in the field, the roots grow toward the grass roots, and they have little tiny tubes that grow into the grass root, and then they can draw out the nutrients they need from the root of the grass. In each of those places, we're going to mark here so that you can see. And then over here, there's probably another grass way over here. So I brought a grass root coming down from somewhere off the page. And it grows that way too. In every place where it attaches, it is able to draw some nutrients, whatever nutrients it needs that he can't get in any other way. It draws those nutrients from the grass plant. And so that's what I was trying to tell you when we were down there, and I was explaining to you how they get their nutrients from underground. We're going to look at a couple art projects that we're going to send home with you, or that we're going to give you online to have. So we'll do those in just a minute. So I'm going to show you how you can make your very own picture of an Indian paintbrush. And you're going to find that you can download this piece of paper that you're looking at here on the video that has 3 stems and some leaves coming off the stems. Before I show you how to make the Indian paintbrush, do you remember when we talked about all plants and all flowers have shapes? So that's what I did when I made these stems. I used shapes. Remember we talked about that there are sometimes rectangles. Well, the stems are all rectangles. I just made rectangles of 3 different lengths. And all of the leaves have been made from 3 triangles, because this is what a leaf looks like on an Indian paintbrush. So I just used a bunch of triangles and moved them around so that you could see that the stems and the leaves of an Indian paintbrush have shapes, just like we talked about all plants have shapes. The Indian paintbrush itself has shapes, and in order to make our flowers, we're going to use paint and a paintbrush. And I just mixed up a little bit of red watercolor. You may have just a little tray of watercolors at home. That's all you're going to need, and there's a nice friendly ant that wants to look at our picture too. So I'm going to get this paintbrush, and it's important to use a flat paintbrush because a flat paintbrush will give you that almost square shape, kind of short rectangle shape. And all you have to do is take your red paint and get the side of your paintbrush wet with paint, and then put it down like that and keep repeating that so that you have what looks like an Indian paintbrush. And of course, every Indian paintbrush is going to be a little different than the other one, and yours should be too. And sometimes they even have the flower that goes down the side. So just have fun and see the shapes we're making. The Indian paintbrush has a shape too, and we're showing that with our paintbrush. Now, your picture, if you want it to be, can be done. And you've made an Indian paintbrush flower. However, if you want to make it a little more realistic so it looks like a real Indian paintbrush like we looked at down in the field, when that is dry, clean out your brush, take a little bit of green paint and put just the tip of your paintbrush in it on the side, the flat side, and just go back over your Indian paintbrush at the bottom of each of your rectangles, each of your squares almost, and put just a dab of green so that when you're done you really do have something that looks just like an Indian paintbrush. So that's the first project you can work on. Then I thought of another thing for you to do that might be a lot of fun too. Remember that the boy in the story painted the colors of the sunset. So I found a picture of a prairie, grassland, that I took. It doesn't have Indian paintbrushes on it, but it does have prairie flowers, grassland flowers on it. And I took away the top of the picture and I put in a sun and I put in lines. You can use, again, watercolors, the colors of the sunset, or you can use chalk, which would be kind of fun, or you can use crayon, marker, anything you want to paint your very own sunset. You might even want to go outside and look at a real sunset and try to copy it on your picture of what the sunset looks like by your house. I hope you have a great time. See you next month. Bye-bye.